Psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes. We could also add emotions into that and consider it the scientific study of behavior, emotions, and mental processes. Though the focus of psychological work is human beings, some psychologists study animal behavior as well to get a foundation, especially if their work is in the biological or evolutionary realm of psychology. Let's take a look at this definition and break down some components. First, scientific study. When we say that psychology is a science, it means that we use the scientific method to generate information and from which we draw our conclusions or assess our theories. We're going to cover a lot of different theories and hypotheses from psychology this semester, and I'll try to point out in some of those places where the theory has more evidence that has been garnered through the scientific method and where there is insufficient, a lack of, or simply no evidence gathered by the scientific method. So an important part of evaluating theories in psychology is looking at findings, evidence in the field. If you're a psychology major, you are probably already aware that psych majors here have to take a statistics class and also a research methods class. Research methods courses focus on how to design and carry out the collection of data. Statistics classes focus on what to do with those data once gathered. So how do we use data to test our hypotheses? So as a field, psychology has become more empirical in nature since its founding. When I say empirical, I mean evidence-based. So empiricism is the focus on evidence to draw conclusions. And psychology is considered a behavioral and social science because it uses the scientific method or is empirical. We'll talk more about the scientific method later. Let's look at the other components of the definition. We focus on behaviors, which are the actions or expressions of an individual, and mental processes. You'll also hear me use the word cognition to refer to thoughts. Mental processes refer to any of the aspects of the way our brain works and what our conscious thoughts are. Now, you'll sometimes see emotion added here, though the reason I don't overtly put it in the definition as written on the board is because when we actually study emotion, we tend to look at the mental processes that underlie them or the behaviors that are meant to display them. Though in a later unit, we will learn about emotions specifically and the different theories and processes for studying them. So as noted, psychology is a scientific discipline, so we need to take a moment to refresh our memories about science and see how it applies in this field. First, there are goals to the study of psychology, to our field, and we need to understand what the goals are before we can understand why data are collected or things are hypothesized as they are. So let's take a moment to look at the 4 main goals of psychology, starting with description. When we want to understand anything in the field of psychology, we have to start with defining what it is, and we meet that with the goal of description. In this goal, we're trying to figure out what a thing is or what it looks like. Let's take depression, for example. It's something that we study a lot in the field of psychology that's not studied much in most other fields, except for maybe some of the medical fields. In order for us to even have this term depression that we all understand as having a specific meaning, folks had to conceive of it, study what it was and what it was not, and then come up with its term and its definition. All of that is happening in the realm of description. Our goals are a bit hierarchical in that we need to be able to describe before we can explain. In our goal of explanation, we're trying to figure out why a thing is the way it is or why it exists as it does. So once we've described what a thing is, then we try to explain, why am I seeing this? Once we can explain why something is, we can start to move on to prediction. That's where we try to figure out when or where, under what conditions we would see this thing. For example, with depression, we would first describe what are its characteristics. Then we would try to explain why we see it. What is the cause of it? Once we know what's causing it, we can start to predict the conditions under which it would occur. If it tends to occur after folks have experienced many years of high stress or when a certain gene is present, then we'd use those factors to help us predict when we are likely to see it in other cases. And then we can get to our ultimate goal, which is to influence. Sometimes this is described as controlling. When we influence, it means that we can figure out how to increase or decrease the presence of something. Think of depression again, for example. A goal we might have is to reduce depression in individuals. Before we can do that, we have to know what depression is, why it exists, when it'll exist, or what are the conditions then, so that we can influence its occurrence. That is, we can try to decrease it. In order to tackle any or all of the goals of psychology, we use the scientific method.